Senator Coons, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chairman Menendez, and thank you, Secretary Kerry, for appearing and for outlining and for discussing with us in detail the strategy to degrade and destroy ISIL. And I, too, want to thank Ambassador Ford for his commendable service and his ongoing commitment to the people of Syria. I have a long opening statement, which I will simply submit for the record. I share your grave concern about ISIL, the threat it poses to our regional allies and to the United States, and the actions that they took in the massacring of Christians, Yazidis, Turkmen, and am proud that we have stood up to them, and I'm eager to hear and learn more about the strategy and exactly how it will play out. First, Mr. Secretary, if I might, in your visit to Baghdad last week, the Prime Minister announced a proposal to establish a National Guard style of force of Sunnis that would reclaim and protect predominantly Sunni areas. And I think reconciliation between Shia and Sunni in the formal government and in the on-the-ground conditions in Iraq is absolutely essential to our having a prospect of success. Can you explain how long it will take to establish this National Guard-style Sunni force on the ground in Iraq, how this model will work, and if there would be any role for our National Guard in training or equipping or supporting this Iraqi National Guard?
Senator Coons, that's a really good question, and I don't have all those answers at this point in time. I mean, there are military decisions with respect to who's going to be involved in training them and whether there's room for some National Guard input, et cetera. I'm confident that the military folks would not dream of advising and assisting with respect to the National Guard structure without using their experience within our military as to how it's worked here and how it's been effective.
Then let me ask
that said, but that said, let me just say very quickly, the theory of it is to try to localize capacity in a way, as I think you know, that deals with this sectarian divide. One of the reasons that the, quote, Iraq Army, as it's been called, folded in Mosul and before the wave of ISIL was frankly that some of the officers abandoned the men who were left behind, and there was a real sense of sectarian divide there.
Right.
They left because they were perceived by many people, and this was part of the problem with that Iraq at that time, that there was a Sunni Shia divide, sectarian divide within the construct of the military itself. And people to some degree felt even that it went so far as to be the Prime Minister's sort of personal military entity, and there wasn't a stake in it. So it was the absence of that commitment that motivated people to take off, and that has to be done away with. There has to be a unity. So whatever this National Guard is, it's going to have to still be unified and connected to the state and to a sense of national enterprise, but made up of people who have a greater stake in their local community, in their region, which was absent previously.
I strongly agree and support your hard work in the diplomacy side of trying to address the challenges in Iraq, because if we have a Shia-only government and military, it's not sustainable, and that's in some ways what created the vacuum. Let me move on to two regional questions, if I could. Has the campaign against ISIL affected our ongoing negotiations to end Iran's illicit nuclear program, and how has a potentially expanded military campaign against ISIL made it more difficult to find a final deal between Iran and the P5+1, the deadline coming in November? Or have the mutual interests of Iraq and some of the P5+1 members provided a common point of interest for ongoing dialogue? How has it affected our...
Well, we hope it's going to be the latter. We hope, obviously, very much it will be the latter part of your question, that it hasn't affected it, that it can continue. Our P5+1 folks left for New York this afternoon. We will be engaging in that activity over the course of the next days, and we'll get a better sense of it. My belief is that the nuclear issue is so huge in its consequences, not just to Iran, but to the region, to the world, to all of us. The interest in getting rid of the sanctions, which is the end goal here with respect to Iran, and our end goal of being able to reach an agreement, is significant enough that they won't let things. And to the credit of people in the P5+1, thus far, there's been a compartmentalization. Russia and China are both very constructively continuing to be active and involved in the negotiations and constructive within them. And our hope is that that will prevail going forward. But the answer is not yet defined fully.
Let me make sure you're not misunderstood, because I don't think you meant exactly what you just said. The end goal is not to end the sanctions. The end goal is not to reach...
The end goal is to end the nuclear possibility, but what I said is their end. I think I said their end goal. Their desire...
That might be a helpful clarification.
No. I thought I said their desire is to obviously get the sanctions. You can't do that. You can't lift the sanctions without absolutely guaranteeing that the 4 pathways to a nuclear weapon have been closed off. And that's what we're working at.
Last question. I'm very concerned about the stability, security, safety of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, our vital ally in the region, which has borne so much of the challenge and burden of the refugees from Syria. And I am concerned that ISIL has had efforts to infiltrate Jordan, and there have been some isolated outbreaks of violence in Jordan related to ISIL. What are we doing, and what more can we do to strengthen King Abdullah and to partner with him and work with him as we expand the mission we're talking about here, and as it has some impact not just in Syria and Iraq, but also in Jordan?
Well, we're working very, very closely with our friends in Jordan. And I was in Jordan, and I met with King Abdullah a few days ago, last week, I think Wednesday night, after I'd been to Iraq. We spent the evening talking about the various things we need to do together. They are determined to be helpful to us, and we are determined to be helpful to them, and we will be. We're committing additional funds, we're committing additional equipment and capacity, and you know, everybody shares concerns with all the neighbors in the region. I mean, ISIL, that's one of the reasons why this is so critical. And I can assure you that an already extremely robust mill-to-mill, intel-to-intel, and you know, supply assistance program and economic program will be even more robust going forward. And you all have the budget, and you know what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr.